Good morning, dear students. Today, we are going to talk about an interesting lesson, talking about energy transfer through water cycle. Are you ready? As we all know that water is important for all living organisms to survive. Human, animals, plants need fresh water to survive. The water we need to live on earth can be found in rivers, lakes, etc. Most of plants depend on rain that falls from the clouds in the sky to grow. Water has three states: solid state, liquid state, and gaseous state. Melting process. It is a process in which solid state change into liquid state. Evaporation process. It is a process in which liquid state change into gaseous state. While condensation process is the process in which gaseous state change into liquid state. Freezing process is the process in which liquid returns back into solid state. As we all know that the main source of energy is the sun. The sun is the main source of energy and main source that drives the water cycle. Sunlight provides the energy needed to melting ice and changing it into liquid water, evaporating liquid water and form water vapor. And the last thing is generating the wind movement, and we talk about it later. The water cycle in nature. The water cycle provides water for all living organisms and regulate weather on our planet. Natural recycle of water, where water moves from different resources to the atmosphere, then this water finally comes back to the earth in the form of rain and snow. So what is the meaning of water cycle? Yes, water cycle, it is the continuous movement of water among different water reservoirs. So what is the meaning of water reservoirs? Water reservoirs, they are the storage locations of water on earth, like rivers, lake, living organism, atmosphere, ocean, sea, glaciers, soil, and rocks. Here you see the water cycle. The water cycle consists of three processes and two steps. The three processes are evaporation, condensation, precipitation, while the two steps are runoff step and collection step. Let's talk in details about it. First, let's talk about the processes. The first process, as we said, it's an evaporation process. It's the process in which matter changes from liquid state to gaseous state. Through the water cycle, the sun heats the water in ocean, seas, lakes, rivers, streams, and other water bodies. This leads to evaporation of water and changing it into water vapor due to gaining thermal energy. The second process is the condensation process. It is the process in which matter changes from gas to liquid. The air that is saturated with the water vapor cools due to the decreasing of air temperature. So the water vapor changes into liquid water, and clouds start to be formed, where they consist of tiny droplets of water. The last process is precipitation process. It is a process in which water falls in the earth in form of rain, sleet, snow, or hail. After precipitation happens, the water cycle can be affected by two steps, which are runoff and collection. The runoff step, it is a step in which water flows along the earth's surface into river and then into ocean and sea. The second step, it is a collection step, in which rainwater falling on earth's surface is collected or gathered in different water bodies. But wait a minute, we said in condensation process, clouds are formed. So how clouds are formed? Clouds are formed due to the condensation of water vapor into water droplets that attach to particles of dust, smoke, etc. in the air. When large number of these droplets join together, they form clouds. Clouds made up of millions of tiny water droplets. When the cloud becomes too heavy, they start to fall rain. As you can see here in the picture. Do plants make evaporation process? Yes, and it's called transpiration process. Transpiration process is a type of evaporation process that takes place through the stomata on the plant's leaves. As you can see here, when we water the plant, the water goes up until it reaches the leaves. The stomata inside the leaves let the water change into water vapor and coming out from it. About 10% of water vapor in the air comes from the transpiration of the plant. If you want to see the transpiration process, we need to bring two plants different in size, put one of them in direct sunlight and other in shadow areas. Tie around a leaf from each plant a plastic bag. What we notice? Yes, water droplets formed inside each of these two bags. The sunlight affects the amount of transpiration of plant, where when the amount of energy comes from the sun increase, the transpiration in the plant leaves also increase. Energy transfer in water cycle leads to increasing or decreasing the level of water in some lakes. There was a large salt lake in Turkey. By passing time, lake become like a small puddle, and sometimes it dries up completely in the summer. This lake hosts a huge number of flamingo that migrate and reproduce there when the weather is warm. Flamingo feed on algae that's found in the shallow water of this lake. So due to the increase in the evaporation of lake in summer, lake may lead to complete drought. So scientists try to discover ways to conserve the ecosystem at this lake and protect it from climate change. These are the factors that affect the water cycle. The first factor is the energy. The energy that coming from the sun, which is the solar energy, includes the thermal energy that affect water cycle that cause the change of the states of water. The second factor is the force. We have two forces, the gravity force and the wind force. The wind force is the movement of air from one place to another in the presence of difference in temperature. Let's talk about the first factor, which is the solar energy. The distribution of the solar energy. The amount of solar energy that reaches the earth differs from one place to another. The hottest region, it is the area or the region in which evaporation process is the greatest. The moderate region or the warm region, they are the region in which evaporation process is the moderate. And the coldest region, the region or area in which the evaporation process is the smoothest. When the sun falls perpendicular on the area near the equator is the greatest line in the middle of the earth. So when the sun falls perpendicular to the area near the equator, sun rays are concentrated on a small area, giving a high effect of heat. The weather is hot and humid. While when the sun falls semi-inclined on the area north or south the equator, sun rays are distributed somehow on large area, giving low effect of heat. So the weather is warm. While when the sun falls very inclined on the areas far away from the equator, the sun rays are distributed or very distributed on a very large area, giving lowest effect of heat. The weather is cold. Note, some areas on Earth have very little amount of rain, and this causes the formation of large areas of desert. When the weather of the areas as we move to north and south the equator depend on the temperature and precipitation at this area, where the weather could be warm and humid, or could be freezing and cold. As we are talking about thermal energy, heat can be transferred by three different ways: conduction, convection, and radiation. What is the difference between them? Conduction happens in the solids only, when objects with different temperature touch each other, while convection happens in liquid or gas. As you can see here, it is the process in which heat transfer in liquid and gas, where hot molecules with less density rises up, while colder molecules with more density fall down. And the last way is the radiation, and heat transfer in radiation in gases and space. As you can see, the heat of the sun transfers from the space to Earth's atmosphere by radiation. As we said, that heat transfer by convection through liquid and gas. So when the gas becomes hot, it rises up, and when the gas becomes cold, it falls down. Due to the more density of gas, so it falls down, and less density of gas, so it moves up. This makes a circulation, as you can see here, this called convection current. And this happens because of the unequal heating of land and ocean causes difference in temperature and densities in the water of ocean and atmosphere. As you can see here again, warm air goes up while cold air goes down. The force of gravity helps in the rising and falling of different densities of liquid and gases, which leads to rotating the convection current, causing the formation of wind and ocean current. Again, when a liquid or gas is heated, its molecules expand and becomes less dense and lighter, so it rises up, as you can see here, while the cold liquid or gas is more dense, so it moves downward and replaces the warm liquid or gas to form a cycle of convection current. Convection current in Earth's atmosphere help in determining the regional climate. Do you know what is the relation between convection and condensation process? Yes, as convection causes rising of temperature of air that contains water vapor, and when this air touches a cool surface, it loses its heat. So, water vapor changes into water droplet and then into clouds. Let's do a quick activity that shows an interaction between convection and gravity force. Steps: fill 2 jars with cold water and put blue color. Fill another 2 jars with hot water and put red color. Cover the jar of cold water within a plastic sheet. In case 1, put the hot water at the top and cold water at the bottom. In case 2, put the cold water at the top and the hot water at the bottom. What do you observe? Observation number 1, in case 1, the hot water doesn't mix with the cold water, while in case number 2, cold water is mixed with the hot water. Do you know why? Here is the explanation. In case number 1, the hot water less density are at the top and the cold water which has more density are at the bottom, so mixing doesn't occur. While in case number 2, the hot water molecules less density rises upward, while the colder water molecules more density fall downward by the help of gravity force. So we conclude that the convection current and gravity force affect the movement of water through the water cycle. Let's talk about the second factor that affect the water cycle, which is the forces. Let's begin with the gravity. Water starts to move on, changes its way of movement when a force affects it. There is a main force that affects the cycle, which is the gravity. Causes: falling of melting ice crystals and water droplets found in clouds back to Earth, which leads to flooding of liquid water downhill into streams and rivers towards a large water bodies. Number 2, flowing water in solid state in glaciers from higher altitude to lower altitude areas, where the frozen water melts and flows into the ground or water bodies, as you can see here. Number 3, leakage of liquid water down into the ground, then the groundwater reservoirs, flowing of groundwater from high altitude areas to lower altitude areas. Conclusion: thermal energy that comes from the sun and gravity force are factors affect the movement of water in the water cycle. The second force that affect the water cycle, as you can see, yes, it is the wind force. The wind is the main factor in determining the weather and climate. Wind is another type of force that affect the movement of water. Daily weather conditions depend on wind. The change in wind causes the change in weather. Unequal heating of Earth between the poles and equator generates wind. Wind helps in transporting water through water cycle by carrying water vapor or forming of ocean current. Earth has a global wind system that consists of wind below in a constant direction over long periods of time. So what are the factors that affect the wind direction? Yes, the amount of solar radiation that reaches the Earth and the rotation of the Earth. Those are the two factors that determine the wind direction. Again, the amount of solar radiation that reaches the Earth and the rotation of the Earth. Wind is generated when the warm air rises upward by the effect of sun radiation, and it is replaced by cooler air that flows from nearby areas where, if the warm air contains enough amount of water vapor during its rising, the water vapor condenses, so the air loses this water in a form of rain. At the same time, cooler air masses flow from nearby areas to replace the rising warm air. When the warm air flows away from its place to another one, it cools and descends. By the time it reaches the Earth's surface again, and it becomes dry. This dry air forms a group of dry desert around the Earth. Then the air flows back again to the same place. Thank you for listening and hope you enjoyed it.